Well, something that Kibler has going for him in this matchup is his deck applies pressure, and that's a failing of a lot of the other mid-range strategies that we see. Woodland Wanderer, backed up by some removal spells, is a real strategy against 4-color Rally.
You'll find in Kibler's deck he does have the Den Protector and Deathmist Raptor package, Woodland Wanderer, Tassiger, Jace, a couple copies of that in here. A bunch of spells, of course, in Kolaghan's Command, Fiery Impulse, Murderous Cut, Sarkhan Unbroken, Kiora, and a Lumbering Falls in the mana base. That's how we're going to start things off here in round number 1 of 16 here from Las Vegas. A Flooded Strand there for Combs. Kibler with the Wooded Foothills, something he's played a time or two, as he'll pass the turn back over to Combs. Combs will sacrifice that Flooded Strand. He'll fall down to 19. We'll see what land he wants to search up.
One of the best strategies you can have against 4-color Rally is get on top of them and then back it up with a couple of choice removal spells. Typically, we see a Tarka Red as the deck in Standard best able to execute this game plan. Kibler's can do it as well, but he's leaning much more on mana acceleration. His draw of, let's say, turn 2 Rattleclaw Mystic into turn 3 fully enabled Woodland Wanderer, backed up by 1 removal spell, is going to beat this deck a good percentage of the time.
Canopy Vista is the land that Combs did find. Looking to get the mana base online here. Remember, 4-color deck is his 4-color Rally deck. It's pretty sensitive in what it can do. See a Flooded Strand here from Combs is going to sacrifice that, go down to 18. You want to be able to catch Jace, Deathmist Raptor, Grim Horror Specs, Rally Ancestors, which is double white, Collected Company, which is a single green. You're kind of all over the place as far as your mana is concerned.
It is pushing the limits more than most of the 4-color decks in the format because it is splashing a double white card. We see a lot of 4-color decks, but very rarely do they have any double mana symbols in the list whatsoever. 4-color Rally is pushing the boundaries more than a lot of the other decks.
It'll be an island there for Combs and Jace Vryn's Prodigy. We talked about this in our pregame show. We're going to see this a lot this weekend.
Very important to be able to kill this thing early in the game. It's the easiest way to lose a game of Standard, is just not be able to kill a Jace and have that card run away with the game.
Kibler going to sacrifice a Wooded Foothill, search himself up a Smoldering Marsh. That's why he's down to 19. Brian's hand does look a little land heavy at this point. Of course, as you mentioned, he's going to need a removal spell to get that Jace off the battlefield. It is very important to kill that thing, as he will untap that Marsh, take a draw step here. Now, normally, I'm really good at keeping my eyes on the cards that are in players' hands. Brian's going to make it tough.
Yeah. It is not easy watching him with the flurry of movements.
It'll be a Nissa. That'll search up a basic 4, still shuffle, present, and we're going to go back Floyd Combs' way. That means he's got active Jace. We'll see what he wants to do with it. It's a battle of the flip planeswalkers thus far. Blue to Delta here from Combs. He'll fall down to 17. 3 fetch lands to start. We'll see what land Floyd wants to search up. Remember, this is card number 3 in the graveyard for him. He'll get a basic swamp. Might have some interest in flipping Jace this turn.
Although not an easy thing for his deck to do, as there aren't that many spells in the deck, mostly creatures. It'd have to involve something like, and the only spell you can actually cast at this spot is Murderous Cut, and that works against Jace.
This will be a Catacomb Sifter. That'll bring in Eldrazi Scion along with it. And now we're going to pass the turn back over to Kibler. Kibler untap those 3 lands. He's taking a draw. Picked up a copy of Den Protector. We know that kind of card is in Brian's wheelhouse. Been playing these type of green strategies for years. He'll play an island now. And now here's a copy of Kiora. Now some have asked, when is this card going to actually get to see some play? Kibler's giving it a try this weekend. He'll take a look at the top couple of cards here. Deathmist Raptor is the creature. You get to reveal the top 4 cards of your library. You can put a creature card and a land card. So he'll take the Deathmist Raptor and a Sunken Hollow. Those will go to the grip, the rest will go to the graveyard. Kolaghan's Command among the cards that have gone to the graveyard now. However, that's a card in the graveyard that Den Protector can return. Get that kind of loop going.
All these mid-range decks have a variety of ways of accruing 2-for-1s. There's no shortage of that in the format. Kibler's deck is maybe shorter than most, but he's making it up with a lot more pressure and a lot more planeswalkers.
Yeah, what the Kiora is there is just a draw 2. It might die this turn, it might not. We'll see. What we do know for sure is that Jace is flipping as it discards another copy of Jace, so the Telepath Unbound is here. 5 counters for now. Next up for Combs appears to be another fetch land and Flooded Strand. Hasn't played land yet this turn. Going to do a little bit of math on what he wants to do. There is Flooded Strand. That'll help him get to double white if he does have a rally that he's working towards. He'll sacrifice the Flooded Strand for right now. Can search up a battle land if he'd like. It'll enter the battlefield untapped given the 2 basics that are out there. Sunken Hollow appears to be the weapon of choice. And we'll see what comes next here from Combs. Does have the mana available for Collected Company, one of the hallmark cards of this strategy. Jace is going to go up, going to slow down Nissa. And now it looks like he might have a Murderous Cut on the way. And we do. Catacomb Sifter is going to take care of Kiora. Looks like the Scion going to go over to Kibler. He'll fall a little bit lower. And now the follow-up is Zilliport Cutthroat. And now pass the turn back over to Kibler.
With several removal spells now at the ready. I am not the biggest fan of Lumbering Falls in this format, but something it can provide is a way to tax Jace. It's a challenging thing to do against the Rally deck because they're so adept at gumming up the works. But that's a card to look out for here. If Kibler can get some shots in at some opportune times, try to wear down that Jace, then he can enable some of the more expensive creatures in his hand that are currently shut off due to Combs' ability to flash back a Murderous Cut.
Brian with a Murderous Cut of his own in his hand. Deathmiss Raptor, Sarkhan Unbroken. This deck helped to be put on the map by Josh McClain in his top 8 finish at the Open Series in Kansas City a few weekends ago. You have to imagine those two players have communicated about the best way to go about building this strategy. Now for Brian, he's going to sacrifice Wooded Foothills. Looks like he'll fall down to 17. See what land he wants to search up. Again, battle lands are online for him as well.
The Wooded Foothills cannot get blue mana, so still unable to activate the Lumbering Falls.
I'm going to go with a basic mountain here. And now we'll see what does come next here for Brian. Looks like he's going to start with a Deathmiss Raptor. And the follow-up's going to be a Tasigur. Going to delve a few cards away here. And you can see leaving a mana available. Does have access to 2 main deck copies of Dispel in his deck this weekend.
Well, Dispel would be a great card to have in this spot, as Brian would then be advantaged on the board, would be in a position to threaten the Jace on the way back, and because Combs used a good deal of his graveyard on the first Murderous Cut, would represent most, if not all, of Combs' turn to cast the Murderous Cut.
Combs does have an access to a Rally in hand, another copy of Zilliport Cutthroat as well. But oddly enough, no Collected Companies. Not a lot going on. You imagine if he had a Collected Company, he'd like to cast it or recast it via Jace. Can really start building towards a pretty nice board, but he doesn't have access to any of that stuff just yet. There's a Polluted Delta. Prairie Stream.
It's funny, this is one of the few decks in 4-color Rally, I think that would often prefer just to keep Jace from flipping for most of the game.
Yeah.
They would really love to have just Merfolk Looter. Not to say Jace is bad, and certainly the other side of Jace flashing back spells is significant, but this deck is really in the market for Merfolk Looter.
Looks like that Jace is going to go down 3 counters to recast Murderous Cut. Combs is going to delve away some amount of cards potentially. Could just pay the full 5. There's your payment. Tasigur down. See what does come next. Just a passing of the turn in the face of Deathmiss Raptor. So Kibler, with a couple of cards in hand, will take a draw step. See, Yavimaya Den Protector, Sarkhan in the hand. Looks like Sunken Hollow as well. I caught that Windswept Teeth there too, Brian. Gonna have to go a little bit faster.
It's like when you go to some sporting events and they have the, we're going to put the 3-card Monty style. We're going to put the ball under the hats and move the hats around.
The shell game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Watching Kibler is just one big shell game.
Sarkhan is here. Brings a dragon along with it. Now, we have not seen Sarkhan Unbroken very much in this standard format. Part of the reason for that, I believe, is that it lines up so poorly against Crackling Doom.
That is a big problem with the card. That said, there are a lot of decks, most notably 4-color Rally, that really struggle with flyers and can easily handle most creatures on the ground. So for this matchup at least, Sarkhan Unbroken is going to do some real work.
That dragon's going to become a 2/4 thanks to Jace ticking up. It's up to 4 counters now. Is the Telepath Unbound. Here's another copy of Zilliport Cutthroat. A Windswept Heath here from Combs.
But you can sort of see the plan here from Kibler. Combs doesn't have much in the way of attackers right now. There's no good attacks to be had. Brian can start taxing Jace. Rally doesn't mean very much right now, and Kibler's also drawing to several copies of Dispel to cut that off if he doesn't already have it.
And he just picked up one for his draw step.
So he's in, with it, drawing a Dispel puts Kibler in a very good spot now. Because you get the feeling here, Combs is going to need something like Rally the Ancestors or Collected Company to go off to be able to accrue enough cards to keep up with Brian's forces.
And now Brian's going into real dragon territory now. And this is a weakness of the 4-color Rally deck. You know this deck has some difficulty against Mantis Rider, Thunderbreak Region, and just flying in general. And now Brian has 2 4/4s. He's going to plus his Sarkhan here to draw a card and add a mana. Picked up another copy of Dispel.
Huge draw. I think Combs is in some serious trouble now.
Yeah, there's a Yavimaya Coast. Keep in mind, Brian also has Den Protector in his hand as well, so we could see 3 Dispels get cast over the course of maybe 2 turns.
Exactly, and you know, look at the board state right now. Combs' creatures, not worth very much. And what he's drawing to primarily are instants that Brian has also cut off with his copies of Dispel.
This is a difficult spot here for Combs.
It's very impressive because Kibler fell behind early on in this game. Jace is still in play. Got to loot several times in flip. Murderous Cut was cast and then cast a second time. But Floyd's just got very little going on right now.
And another draw of Rally Ancestors, I believe, not particularly helpful. He's going to play a Prairie Stream. And for Floyd, it might be time to think about maybe cashing in that Eldrazi Scion token for a Scry.
Yeah.
Just something. He might need a little help controlling his draw step. He moved his Jace up to 3. But outside of that, not a lot going here for Floyd Combs. Kibler will draw a card. So another copy of Deathmist Raptor. Speaking of Kibler before the tournament, he said, I'm a fan of Deathmist Raptor plus Den Protector right now. Just doesn't really like it in the Megamorph shell.
And Deathmist Raptor does feel like a vulnerability for some of the lists of Jeskai Black that have become so popular. They do have some removal that exiles, but they're a little short on that kind of stuff. And I feel like you need these card advantage engines that can also apply pressure because you're in the market for both things.
Brian's real dragon that has not been affected by Jace is going to take care of Jace. The other dragon's going to come across for just 2 in the air. Curious to see how he wants to use Sarkhan this turn.
I believe Brian would argue that they're all real dragons.
I apologize. Deathmist Raptor. Sarkhan going to crank out another dragon. And you have to imagine, when you've got 2 Dispels in your hand, you're playing against Rally, you are feeling pretty cozy.
And I'm sure these Dispel is just a very popular card right now in general. So not to say that it's just because of this, but Sarkhan, backed up by Dispel to cut off Crackling Doom, does seem like a nice angle of attack against some of the decks in the format.
If Sarkhan doesn't die to Crackling Doom, it's a heck of a card.
Right, if it ended up at 3 loyalty instead of 2, when you minused it, could be very different.
It might make Teamer a playable archetype all by itself.
Yep.
But the fact that it goes down to 2, the dragon dies to Crackling Doom because it's likely going to be the biggest creature on the battlefield, and then the Sarkhan dies, makes it a real issue. But as you said, if you have Dispel to protect it, I'll be talking about something else entirely. Now, here's Sidisi's Faithful. That'll come down here to exploit. You're going to get a couple copies, excuse me, a couple triggers from Zilliport Cutthroat. You also get a Scry from Catacomb Sifter as well, so not a bad draw there. Going to bounce the dragon, and then resolve all these triggers. Now it's time to Scry from Catacomb Sifter. That top card from Combs will now become the bottom card. And now it's going to be another attempt at a rally. That's the last card in Combs' hand. And Kibler is at the ready with a second Dispel here. Now he wants to read this just to make sure he knows exactly what it's going to do. And I don't think this is the most backbreaking rally in the world, but I have no interest in letting this resolve. And neither does Brian, so he's going to Dispel that.
I mean, arguably, a Collected Company off the top could yield something more dangerous, but that feels good enough for me.
Now, I am curious to see how Brian wants to use Sark in this turn, and also these Deathmiss Raptors, because you can make an argument of it's time to get in with these 3/3s.
I think the problem with that is he doesn't want Floyd to be able to chump block, scry, gain some life, get some value that way. I think Kibler's happy to take the position of, if you want to make that happen, you got to do it on your own turn, where I can threaten to then attack you back.
Okay. Kibler going to make another dragon. Sark going to fall down to 1. The Morph is a Den Protector, which can get back a Dispel. Brian's got that all lined up right now, as Combs is at 6. Here's Collected Company off of the top. Going to un-Megamorph Den Protector. It'll get a +1/+1 counter. It's going to return Dispel. That'll counter Collected Company. We are done here for game number 1. Brian Kibler going to win game number 1 here over Floyd Combs. Teamer Black up a game over 4-color Rally.
Kibler got the board on the ground to parity, attacked in the air, was able to keep Combs off his critical spells with Dispels, and was able to come from behind in a spot where I thought that Kibler had fallen too far behind early in the game to catch back up.
Well, now we're going to take a look at the sideboards here for both players, and we're going to start with Floyd Combs, who's got an Abzan Charm, a Fleshback Marauder, Merciless Executioner, Minister of Pain, 2 Felidar Cubs, 3 Deathmiss Raptors of his own, 3 Anaffense of the Foremost, and then 3 copies of Duress.
I think the 3 copies of Duress will be coming in here with Kibler showing problematic Planeswalkers alongside Dispel. I think the Abzan Charm and the Fleshback Marauder are well suited for this matchup as well.
Other side of things, we got 2 Roasts, a Fiery Impulse, a Self-Inflicted Wound, 2 Disdainful Strokes, and Exert, Treasure Cruise, Ob Nixilis Reignited, 2 copies of Radiant Flames, a Duress and Negate, a Kolaghan's Command, and a Virulent Plague.
A lot of ways to take this. I think Duress and Negate, the 2 copies of Radiant Flames, the Exert Influence, the 2 Disdainful Strokes to counter the key stuff, the Kolaghan's Command, all these cards seem anywhere from fine to very good to me. So Kibler's got a lot of wiggle room on how he wants to sideboard. Just depends on what he wants to cut.
Well, those are the options there available to both players. They'll sideboard and shuffle up here with about 33 minutes to go. In the meantime, we're talking about the very popular promotion with Star City Games. It is SCG Game Night, where in the month of December, of course, it's the reindeer. That's very timely. But January and February, we got some cool stuff coming too.
Every month, Star City produces new pins and tokens that we send out to these kits in local stores. This is a December kit. Stores can run game night any way they want, sanctioned, unsanctioned, any format. Just get players in the store on a regular basis for some fun and friendly magic. January coming down the pipeline. If you want to get signed up for the February kit, you see Grizzly Band here, and the February kit coming right up here. We have
Magus of the Moon.
Head over to StarCityGames.com/game night for more information. Find game night closest to you. Contact your Star City Games in-store play representative to get this set up. Canadian owners, keep in mind we have changed the shipping rates. We are now just charging U.S. domestic shipping. So if you have not brought game night to your store because of the shipping rates, those have been changed. Contact your Star City Games in-store play representative.
Kibler, Combs, Teamer Black, 4-color Rally. One of these decks, 4-color Rally, I'd say more popular than the other against Teamer Black. But Teamer Black's starting to pick up a little bit in popularity, and I think that Brian was so confident in his deck this week that he decided, you know what, I want to play some Magic. But what also draws a lot of players out, and we've got almost 470 players here this weekend, is the invitational payout is no joke.
It's a lot.
We are not kidding around here, where you've got your winner with $10,000, 35 Open Series points, an invite, of course, to our first invitational next year in Columbus. Second place, $5,000. Top 4, $2,500. Top 8, $1,500. So if you make the top 8 of this thing, at least $1,500 you're walking away with. You're also, of course, playing for your likeness on a card, invite to the Players' Championship next year, and someone is walking out with that first place prize. That means we're going to see him next weekend at the Players' Championship.
Yeah, I mean, $50,000 among 16 players. That's over $3,000 a head on average. And the top end of that tournament is worth quite a bit more on top of the 10 grand you get for winning this one and your likeness on the card. So players playing for quite a bit this weekend.
Of course, for the Players' Championship next week on December 19th and the 20th at the Star City Game Center in Roanoke, Virginia. Brad Nelson was the one who did win that last year. He's the defending champion. He's looking to defend the title again. So going to be a lot of fun to watch the tournament, but we got to work our way through this tournament. And who knows, even though we don't see Brian a lot here on the SCG Tour, he could be the one walking out of here with $10,000 and going to Roanoke next weekend.
Well, he loves these kind of decks that are pressure backed up by mana acceleration, removal, and some haymakers. I think the addition of black adds a lot of power to the deck, shores up some weaknesses, and I like a lot of what's going on with this list. Woodland Wanderer is a card that I didn't think of very much during preview time when the format felt like a lot of copies of Abzan Charm and Ruinous Path was pretty popular, but the format has gotten to a place where damage-based removal is more popular than a lot of the exiling stuff or the Terminate style effects. On top of that, to beat a Tarka Red, I think you need threats that are very good at playing offense and defense. Manus Rider is one of the best cards in the format for pressuring that deck. Woodland Wanderer is quite a bit better. That thing's big enough to absorb a lot of pump spells on the way back, and a 6/6 for 4 can end the game very quickly. So I think that card in particular has gotten a lot better with the metagame shifts of the last couple weeks.
Woodland Wanderer, for me, when I first saw it, it reminded me a lot of Spectral Force for some reason. Just a big green idiot. But the thing about Woodland Wanderer is Vigilance and Trample on a big creature is a heck of a combo.
It's one of the best cards you can have in the format if you're solely worried about creature combat. It's way better than Siege Rhino, even, if that's what your priorities are. The problem is, no enters the battlefield trigger, no leaves the battlefield trigger, and no protection against removal. So when Obzon Charms are all over the place, it's a hard card to rationalize building around. But with the format being a lot more about fiery impulses and so forth, Woodland Wanderer gets a lot better.
But that card, like I would say a lot of the cards in Brian's deck, pretty soft to Crackling Doom. So we're going to see as we make our way through our standard rounds here this weekend, and he hasn't played against Crackling Doom this round, but as he makes his way through the rounds this weekend, of course, Jeskai Black's going to be a popular deck, and Mardu Green or whatever color that deck is splashing. So you have to imagine he's going to run into Crackling Doom at some point, and can his deck overcome that card, especially if it's cast multiple times in a game?
Well, you know, his plans are, he's got a couple Dispels in his deck. He's got copies of Death Misraptor and Den Protector, so he can win just a general long game. And then he's got a couple more cards like that in his sideboard, access to cards like Duress, another Dispel, the Negates, and so forth. So I'm sure it's a problematic card for him, but a lot of the 58th, 59th, 60th card selections in his deck do seem informed by trying to shore up that weakness.
Game 2 about to be underway here between Combs and Kibler. Combs will be on the play. Looks like he has scryed. And we are underway. It's a Canopy Vista to start here yet again for Floyd. Brian with the Wooded Foothills. Windswept Heath, a passing of the turn.
Fetch lands are pretty complicated in this format.
Touch.
Much more complicated than they are in Modern, and they can be quite a bit complicated in Modern.
Yeah.
Get used to the say go and stare at my hand and my land for a little while over the course of this weekend.
Unless we're watching Todd Anderson.
Yes. Who is playing speed magic.
Pretty much. And with his deck, he needs to.
Yeah. That's the major problem I have with the possibility of playing Jeskai Black in this tournament. I think a lot of people will pick up Todd's list because of the results and how good it looks, and not have anywhere near enough games in to play the deck at an appropriate speed.
It's a Rattleclaw Mystic. See, the thing about Kibler, he can't leave home without at least one mana accelerant in his deck.
Has to be there.
Can't do it. Noble Hierarch, Sylvan Caryatid, whatever, Lotus Cobra, something to be able to accelerate him.
Mana Fixer with Woodland Wanderer.
Bang.
More for Death Misraptor shenanigans.
I just wouldn't be a tournament without him trying to accelerate towards something. I wouldn't be okay with it. Combs, he searched up a Prairie Stream. Now he's going to fall down to 18. We'll see what's next. There's a Swamp. And now there's Grim Horror Specs. This seems like the card that Combs was missing last game.
Yeah. Well, Nantuko Husk was a big one, too.
That would help.
He had a lot of the synergistic creatures, but just no way to get anything proactive going.
Dispel was the draw for Kibler. Polluted Delta is land number 3. Brian will sacrifice that. Battle lands are online, given the basics. We'll see what land Brian wants to search up here. He's going to go with a Sunken Hollow. There's Kolaghan's Command. Get that off the battlefield, and we'll see what the other mode's going to be. I think he might make Floyd a discard. He will. And I love, love, love the no attack.
Little suspicious, but a lot of dispels and such in Kibler's deck.
Nantuko Husk passed that turn back.
And definitely does not want to give an opening there for Combs to resolve a collected company.
Combs might be thinking, you missed out on 2 points of damage, but that's not the case. Next up here for Kibler, he's delving. He'll play a Tassiger. He'll pass the turn back, representing Dispel very hard right now. And Combs has at least one copy of Collected Company, potentially two. The problem here for Floyd is no third land at this point. Now here is a Duress. So does Brian actually have the Dispel? The answer is yes, along with Disdainful Stroke, Negate, Jace, and Den Protector.
All right, so Brian sideboarded here, definitely trying to fight over the 4-mana spells.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
It's about the worst hand that Combs can see right now.
Pretty hard to pick a hole through it.
Next turn, even if Kibler misses his land drop, he can play Jace with 2 mana up and attack you for 4. If he draws a land, he gets Morph down with Kolaghan's Command in the graveyard, and Counterspell mana still available.
Dispel down. Trying to take care of the cheapest of the bunch. Kibler will draw. Both players having a bit of mana issues right now. Woodland Wanderer, the draw here for Brian. And now I'm curious if Brian has some interest in maybe saying, drop Woodland Wanderer on the battlefield. I got 2 gigantic threats. You've got a 1-turn window to do something awesome. Looks like he's just going to go with Jace. Maybe take a little more conservative approach.
I think Kibler is working from the vantage point of, I don't think Combs can beat this. I got a clock in play. And also he had a fine backup play for that turn, which is just Jace and leave up 2 mana. If Kibler had no option but leave up Counterspell or cast Woodland Wanderer, I think he probably would have cast a Woodland Wanderer. But this play is good enough.
Sure.
So there's no reason to take any risks.
Well, we're going to head back Kibler's way as another Nantuko Husk did come down for Combs. There's a 4-5 coming into the red zone. There's a quick block. Combs not interested in taking 4 damage. More importantly, he's looking to build up that graveyard for rally.
And now there's no way Kibler leaves off the shields here for the counter spells for the rest of the game, because that chump block has to indicate that Combs is playing towards a Rally of the Ancestors.
It's a morph there for Kibler. He'll pass that turn back. And I agree with you. When you've got Negate and Disdainful Stroke up against this deck, you're pretty comfortable. Pretty good spot. And if Brian works his way into more lands, then we'll see him cast Woodland Wanderer, but he's got a good clock out there already.
The plan is very obvious here, which is just mash Combs on the ground and prevent him from playing any of his powerful stuff.
Sidisi's Faithful, Exploit, Bounce Tassiger. That'll work. And now we're going to head back to Kibler, but he's going to activate Jace first on the end step. See what Brian wants to discard here. He'll discard Woodland Wanderer, so he's far away from that card. Now, if memory does serve, the morph is Den Protector. And swamp the draw step here for Kibler. Going to activate Jace on his turn now. He'll draw and discard. Rattleclaw Mystic. But Swamp will bite the dust. That's card number 4 in the graveyard here for Brian. There's a Sunken Hollow. This is Tassiger again. Going to delve away the entire graveyard. Able to leave up at least 1 counterspell, potentially 2, depending on how Kibler's feeling. And he's in a commanding position right now.
And next turn, if he gets to untap, not even a discard spell as much assistance to Comb here, because Kibler has the Negate, the Disdainful Stroke, and the ability to Den Protector either of those spells back.
Brian can activate Tasker if he'd like, and he will. So turn over a couple of cards here. No punishment for really doing this, it appears. Here's a Rally for 1. That'll get back to Faithful. An Exploit will bounce Tassiger. And now here is the trigger. Den Protector is 1, Jace is 2. I think you just give the Jace back, but that's not the end of the world, because that's just something for Jace to discard.
Exactly. Kibler's done a nice job of managing the graveyard here, not flipping the Jace when there wasn't a whole lot to do with it. Instead, resets the graveyard, and now, even if he finds something that isn't very powerful with Tassiger, it's just something that can be looted away.
A Jace activation here from Kibler. Going to be putting card number 2 in the graveyard. We just got to figure out what card number 2 is going to be. So there goes Jace, predictably. We'll say Radical Mystics helped out here. Needed the mana.
Yep.
Here's Woodland Wanderer. That thing's a 6/6. And Brian with a counterspell available. 6/6 Vigilance Trample. There's Ullaport Cutthroat. Don't care about that.
No, Kibler is going to be able to win a game of pure combat against Combs very easily. It's just keeping off of Collected Company and maybe Rally the Ancestors.
Kind of the story of Brian's career.
Yeah.
If it's about pure combat,
Right. Good luck.
It's all him. When these green decks line up correctly, life is pretty good for Kibler. He's going to activate Jace. Treasure Cruise the draw. He doesn't fill up his graveyard as well as some of the other decks we've seen in the format, so I don't think we're going to see him with a lot of Delve cards. And not going to be nowhere near as fluid as maybe, say, Todd Anderson's take on Jeskai Black, where he's using his graveyard like crazy. It's basically an extension of his hand, but playing a couple Delve cards here, probably a good idea.
And it's so trivial for this card to be blue 3, draw 3, and that card would show up all over the place in most standard formats. So even if you aren't casting Ancestral Recall all the time, paying 2 or 3 mana is still going to be a good exchange.
I think we're okay with a concentrate in this format.
Right.
Wouldn't be so bad.
And that's almost just the worst case scenario.
Yep. Looks like the Morph and Woodland Wanderer are coming in the red zone here. Combs has some options here as far as blocks are concerned. Floyd going to shrug their shoulders, says, I'll jump in front of this. Going to sacrifice Ullaport Cutthroat. And Kolaghan's Command with the sacrifice on the stack is going to go after the Husk. And Brian looks like he's going to return Dent Protector. So Husk down, Dent Protector going to come back to the grip. And I don't want to call it a hard lock, but I don't know how Combs are getting out of this.
Kolaghan's Command plus Den Protector plus a bunch of counter spells plus Woodland Wanderers in play seems like you're asking a lot of Combs to get out of this.
Pluto Delta has shown up here for Floyd, finally. Took him a long time to draw that 4th land.
He's also just facing lethal on the table now.
I suppose he is at 9 now, isn't he? Make it 8. Given this Pluto Delta, it's going to search up a land. Battle land, not a good idea right now. It needs a land that's going to enter the battlefield untapped. So Island or Swamp likely on the way. I suppose he could search up a Sunken Hollow if he'd like. That's going to be the weapon of choice. And he's just going to extend the hand because there's no getting out of this one here. As Brian Kibler is going to win this match here against Floyd Combs, 2-0. Teamer Black will take care of 4-color rally. And for Brian, someone we don't see a lot here on the SCG Tour. Gets the job done. He's 1-0.
And 2 very good recipes there for beating 4-color rally. One is keep the board at parity on the ground, keep them off of the big plays, and go to the skies. And then game number 2 was just be way bigger on the ground. And again, backed up with some counter spells to prevent Rally Ancestors or Collected Company from resolving.